Sveppur is mushroom in Icelandic. Hello and welcome to That Tech Show, the show that reveals the magicians behind the magic that is everyday technology. That Tech Show is a weekly podcast hosted by myself, Samuel Gregory, and Chris Adams.
Hello.
On today's episode, we have George Coxon. George is the director of Nano Foundation as well as an advisor to the Global Blockchain Initiative. Nano is a super fast, environmentally friendly, community-first cryptocurrency with a bright future. In this episode, we talk all about Nano and why it's so different, what we wanted to be when we grew up, and the difficulties George has experienced being a woman in tech and what she is doing to help change it by speaking at schools and by judging in rising women in crypto. That and much, much more on this week's episode of That Tech Show. Here is George Coxon.
My name is George Coxon. I'm director of the Nano Foundation and director of Appia.
Cool. Well, thank you for being on the show, George. It's a pleasure to speak to you. I think this all started because we got in touch with each other via LinkedIn as well.
Indeed.
Mostly because Sam and I are pretty obsessed with crypto. We talk about it on our news show on a weekly basis. And so it's really a pleasure to have somebody on the show who might be able to give us a little bit more insight into what it's like actually on the other side, inside a currency. So I'd love to know a little bit more about your background, but perhaps let's start with Nano. So what is Nano exactly?
So Nano is a sustainable digital currency with ultra-fast transactions and zero fees over a decentralized, secure network. So just like cash in your pocket, Nano is digital money. Simple as that.
You've done that before.
How can you tell?
So about the way you said it.
So I was interested to learn a little bit more about Nano because I think one of the certainly a lot of benefits in comparison to something like Bitcoin, because there certainly seems to be a lot of comparisons out there. You obviously have a subreddit as well, which we were talking about just as we joined the podcast and we were setting up. So that's going particularly well. You have a very vibrant community. Can you talk to us about the benefits, the differences between Bitcoin versus Nano?
Yeah, so Nano was initially designed, having been watching, our founder Colin had watched Bitcoin and been very excited about the possibility of digital money. And obviously Bitcoin was the vehicle towards kind of the world understanding the potential of digital money in that realm. But unfortunately with Bitcoin, as kind of a first mover and shaker in the space, has some problems when it comes to being actual digital money and digital cash, whether that's speed, fees, and energy consumption. So that's something that we try to fix with Nano, is making a green, sustainable currency with zero fees and instantaneous transactions. So instead of waiting an hour for a Bitcoin transaction, you are now waiting on average 0.2 seconds for a transaction to be fully confirmed across the globe with zero fees. So that's really what we're trying to do, is just be a peer-to-peer digital currency, where Bitcoin is more of a store of value, I think, these days, due to the time and fees involved. And
so, there's a lot of stuff going on right now about sort of Bitcoin, and it's been really popular, I guess, for the first half of the year. There's been a huge rise in its popularity, but certain things that have happened more recently have seen a little bit of a decline. I think China's just shut off like 90% of its mining, which we were just talking about, Sam and I, on our news show earlier the week. How much is the success of Nano or smaller cryptocurrencies tied to Bitcoin? Because they've been very closely pegged for a while.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think there's two kind of facets here. First is in the market and in the price. And with Bitcoin being kind of the most popular, most well-known, and the first mover in this space, obviously will have kind of a larger following. But there always needs to be room for innovation and improvement therein, in my mind anyway. With Bitcoin and with Nano, I think there has to be, a first mover, which Bitcoin was. There has to be forthcoming innovation around it. The Nano's price, unfortunately, is, and the market is all reliant on Bitcoin due to the huge market cap that it has currently. I think we've all seen Elon Musk's tweet that crashed the market, and especially the Bitcoin market due to its energy consumption for Tesla. And I think that shows just how deep the speculation and how easy the crypto market is to be manipulated and moved. And obviously with Nano, we're trying to be a real world currency. And so we don't really partake in the speculative market as much as kind of other organizations and foundations may do. So our real focus is in the real world utility, and not really in the trading aspect of Nano or crypto assets.
So how do you see that being utilized then? Because I think, some places are starting to take crypto payments. How's that working for you? What are you doing to try and get out there and make sure that other organizations, that Nano can be used as a cryptocurrency? And then how do you actually compete against all of the others? Because there's a plethora of cryptocurrencies available.
Yeah, I think I looked today and there's 10,246 or something tokens and assets listed on CoinMarketCap. And
that's incredible. I was going to go for 100.
No, 10,000 plus, and it's all increasing. And as wonderful and as impressive the innovation around all these tokens and assets are, in our minds at Nano Foundation and with Nano, we truly believe in fixing a real world problem and not creating a solution to a problem that does not exist. And so when it comes down to utility, we at Nano Foundation have made sure that we are creating a currency that is usable, that works, which I think 9,099 in that list haven't been proven to actually kind of work to the utility that they said they will. So what we do at Nano is we work very closely with organizations to make sure and to find solutions for problems that organization might currently have. So for instance, we are working with some people on the ground in Lebanon right now who can't get money in and out of the country due to the economical and humanitarian crisis that's really going on there. And I think the limit of an ATM withdrawal is around $200 per month, which is just not feasible for an economy to move forward. So what we're doing is we're working with people on the ground there in using Nano's cross-border capabilities and speed and lack of fees to be able to get money in and out of that country. So with us, we focus on real world utility and working with people who actually have a need for Nano, and it's not just a nice to have currently.
Well, I was talking a couple of years ago with an organization that was setting up to go after that. A bank, a fintech, that was going after that market, really, that international payments, because I think it had been sort of stated by Forbes that it was like a multi-trillion-dollar area of the market that wasn't really being used or exploited at all. But how does, I can see obviously if you're going after that area, but with zero fees, how does Nano fund itself? How does that work?
So we had an interesting, and our distribution story I think is pretty amazing, and that all comes back to our funding and how we currently fund ourselves. So instead of when most of the market had an ICO, initial coin offering, in our minds that only benefits those people that had capital. And that really is the antithesis of why cryptocurrency was designed. And so what we did is we created an online website, and anyone and everyone could jump online to that website and complete Google captures. The 12 boxes you get presented with, and you have to choose the free bridges or the bicycles. It's a very laborious task, but therein lies the secret, is that this method benefited those people that had the most time, and their time was worth the least on a global scale. And so that's how we managed to create truly organic communities where Nano, there was a need for it. And that was in Indonesia, in the Philippines, in Venezuela, Brazil, and continental Africa. And that really is the foundation behind Nano. It's around real world need and utility. And that's kind of how we separate ourselves. But when it comes to how we fund the Nano Foundation, when we closed off this faucet after 2 years, we kept the equivalent of $700,000 worth of Nano, and that's it. We are a not-for-profit foundation. And 3.5, nearly 4 years later, we have $2.5+ million worth of Nano, having never taken a profit or revenue in. So maintaining our not-for-profit status. We are a very, very lean, hardworking team. We're all overworked and underpaid, but we all do it due to the passion that we have for Nano and really changing the world for better. And if anyone does it better than us, we will join them because it is about making a remarkable and tangible improvement to those people that really need it, rather than those that it's nice to have.
Wow, that's incredible. So, how is that that 700,000 you said that's now
$1,000 worth of Nano,
and that's just grown because of the popularity of Nano, the value of Nano?
Yeah, so it's down to the market as well. We have never been frivolous at all, and we are incredibly streamlined. So our only costs are payroll and servers, really, and then legal on top of that, which unfortunately takes a nice sizable
Everyone
chunk.
has to have legal.
Yeah, especially in our space. So we are just incredibly, incredibly lean. Greed has no place inside our foundation or inside our team. And anyone who has given off that impression or is doing this for their own self-serving benefit has found that there isn't really a place for them within the foundation. It is all about doing something better for the wider world.
And that's what makes it a foundation, I guess, rather than...
Exactly. Yeah, we are people first, and that really is it. It's just that. We hire people based on themselves and their passion, their drive, their grit and stamina. You can teach everything else, but you can't teach that kind of thing.
So was that planned then, that it would grow and that was going to be how you would fund it, or is that just...
It's been terrifying. No, it's not been planned at all. So when that kind of number was kept, we didn't have a team formed. We didn't have any entities or anything like that. That was Colin by himself, I think, panicking, being the only person involved in Nano. It was formerly RaiBlocks at the time. But with us, it's definitely been a trial and very challenging and testing, but it's something that we've been trying to keep as pure as possible. We had the option to fundraise if we need to, but we've never had to go down that route. We've definitely had some scary times during the last bear market, where I think we were under $1 for about a year and a half. And actually we were looking to close down the foundation last December, this March, because that's how tight we were with kind of, moving forward. Colin and I were going to continue working, and we're going to move into a lot more of an open source kind of Linux Foundation-esque kind of style. But luckily, the price rose, and we've managed to remain incredibly careful with our funds. And that's why, on top of that, we don't market. It's the same extent. We focus on making a true currency. So we keep our heads down. We're the kind of kid at school, at high school, that's the nerdy one that doesn't partake in the parties. And then when they leave school, they're the ones that, become the high flyers.
I see. That's a good analogy. I like it. I think we missed something in there, though. You mentioned that there was a former name, actually.
Yes, RaiBlocks. People like to mispronounce it in all manners of terms. Ray, RaiBlocks was the initial name chosen by Colin back in the day. Down to the Yap Islands, where they had Ray stones. That was their form of currency. And actually, I was involved before I joined Nano Foundation. Myself and my brother actually created an online digital wallet, the first one for Nano, called Yap Ray. And that's still my Reddit name today, which I'm sure you'll see around and about. But,
there we go. Insight. And so where did Nano come from?
So Nano was a rebranding that needed to happen due to the complexity, I think, of the name RaiBlocks. Nano, with obviously it's a measurement. It's small, it's light, it's fast, and that's really what we wanted to be perceived as. That is the facets behind Nano. the currency. Obviously, we do have, at the beginning, we have some SEO issues. It is a very, very generic name. But the point is that we want Nano to feel so ubiquitous to your everyday life. It is a name that you feel fits into your everyday parlance, really. And that's really what it's become.
Oh, it's a good name. I mean, how you must have gone through a cycle of a huge number of names, I'm sure. It's so difficult naming things.
Yeah, exactly. And especially a world currency as well. It's definitely a challenge. But we're actually about to release, and we've thrown some Easter eggs out there, our currency sign. So we are releasing a currency sign that will fit alongside the dollar sign, the pound sign, and the yen. Bitcoin have been the only currency that have managed to do that, and that took them 10 years to get into Unicode. We will be releasing ours very shortly, and that will hopefully cement our position among fiat currencies as a global currency rather than as a cryptocurrency asset.
What does that look like? Can you tell us?
If I did, I don't think I'd do it justice. I think you'll have to wait for the unveiling, but it is around and about our community if you look hard enough.
All right, cool.
But yes, and our new ticker to go along with that is XNO as well, to be compliant. So Nano, is obviously the currency name, but our new ticker will be XNO, and our currency sign will fit alongside XNO.
That's very cool. And I saw that you had challenge coins as well. I'd seen that someone had made you some physical Nano.
Yes, that's true fan mail. It was such a treat. I've actually got one right here.
That's very cool.
It's
really bigger than
cool.
I thought it would be, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's weighty. It's true quality.
That is very cool.
But,
obviously, it doesn't travel well on an audio podcast, of course. But
exactly.
Maybe we'll save that for a video clip, or put a picture up online.
I think we'll have to. But no, really sweet, and that's all community made. And actually, it was gifted by another community member to our team here in London. So it was a lovely surprise walking into the office.
Because there's a whole community marketplace as well, isn't there?
There is. Our community are just a force of nature. They've created an eBay for Nano, which we're hoping to kind of help push out a little bit further. But it's so wonderful to see the innovation within our community that's constantly invigorating.
So how did that come around? Because we talked about the subreddit before. I think I also noticed that not only do you have over 100,000 subscribers, but you're also like number one on the growth chart for finance and business. Like,
we are.
How do you go about how do you go about building such a fan base? I mean, where did that come from?
We're looking for tips.
Yes, we're looking for tips, really.
No, what it really comes down to passion and a core principle. We, as the Nano community, is famous for its altruism, for its passion, and for its excitement. Everyone is there to help each other. No one's there for their own greed, and that's really where the best ideas come from, is true passion and being open to sharing your ideas. There's no bad projects or bad ideas that get shot down in our community. Everyone is fed back to by other community members, and when we have the time and space, we try to, as much as possible, to lift those projects up. But it is just purely down to having such a core principle, which is Nano, which is the right over your own money and economic freedom, I think. So that's really, I think, the secret sauce behind it. Also letting a community really self-police themselves. We'll try and take a step back, but at the same time, we at the Nano Foundation are just a part of the Nano community, and we're really looking forward to moving into a lot more of an open source, decentralized nature when it comes to the network too.
Well, I was going to ask about that, because on the technology side of things, how involved does the community get in the technology itself?
On a varying degree. With the community, there are some very, very talented developers and very, very talented people in a multitude of ways. When it comes to the Node software, that we would love to see a lot more of kind of community contributions to the Node software, but that does require a very set of specific skills that we aren't in denial about how difficult that is. So that is something that we are hoping to improve in our documentation and improve in kind of how we can clarify and make it easier for developers to jump in and be a part of the network in that way, and how to set up a node, all those kind of instructional tutorials, and getting them out further with a nice educational platform, hopefully.
Documentation, always a big problem in software development.
It is indeed. Ours is rather beautiful, but I think it could be clearer for global translations and languages as well.
And I suppose it's, if you're getting contributors in and you're actually trying to keep to that such a low latency, because I noticed you said about 0.2 seconds for the transaction time, but isn't it around 20 to 100 milliseconds you were talking about latency, I think, as well, across your platform?
It all really depends. We're going through a bit of a change at the moment. We are putting in some very, very novel and very exciting components into the Nano node software, which will be kind of, in our minds, the crypto 3.0 of what cryptocurrency could be, which is removing proof of work entirely. And so we are just about to move forward to V23 and continue those improvements of those components moving forward.
Does that include an increase in the transactions per second? Because I've already seen as well that you've got somewhere in the region of 10 million transactions per second.
I don't know where you've seen that. I wish it was.
I think it might have been that infographic.
Welcome to Community Infographics.
Someone's very proud of that then. They've load tested it.
Well, we're currently on around 70 TPS. And that's been kind of stable for around... I would say for around 6 weeks now. The only thing that's holding us back from a higher TPS with Nano is bandwidth and resources and the algorithms that are in the network right now. So there is actually no physical cap that can be on Nano's TPS. We are working towards making our algorithms that have some slow components in them right now, making them faster, more efficient, and we'll be jumping up those TPS rungs pretty quickly from then on. But there is no limit to Nano's TPS on that.
You heard it here first. I think what's interesting is that I noticed that Nano seems to be being used within other things as well. So I noticed on your subreddit today, because I've been stalking it, there's a gaming platform, Pokey, that are starting to use that for microtransactions. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's exactly where we want Nano to be. Due to Nano's fearless nature, due to its speed, it is perfect for microtransactions. Our dream is that Nano is the money of the internet, really, and has the same speed as internet latency. There's no reason why it can't have that speed. What we're looking for is exactly this: is in-game, microtransactions, or Nano actually, being utilized. So we have actually an ex-Nano Foundation developer created a Unity 3D plugin for Nano, which is so exciting and opens up a whole realm of gaming industries. We and the community are all very excited about this and wild, but we have spoken to Razer, the huge gaming company, as of late. And there's a huge potential for Nano within the gaming world that we're really keen to explore further.
And so the whole technology seems quite unique, or at least different to the original sort of cryptocurrency technology. You talk about moving away from proof of work and that sort of stuff. Is there a way that I can use the Nano technology but for a different application?
So the way that we've designed it is as just a pure currency. So you would have to, if you were looking to use Nano in any other way, that would require you to fork Nano and change some of the fundamentals that we have installed within the network to make sure that it is truly as efficient as possible. So there's no smart contracts, there's no fluff or anything else as layers on top of Nano. We focus on the protocol level being as efficient as possible. And therefore it is a tool and as open source to be used by others as they wish. So whether it's in a closed loop economy and people need to make some sort of tweak to Nano to use that, that's absolutely fine. You can go wild, but we are focusing on Nano being a true currency, and therefore all the work we're doing on the protocol level is to be as efficient as possible in that realm.
And have you seen people fork the code base and go in different directions?
They have tried.
Have we had any successes?
I haven't seen any, no. I mean, we've had a few people try and fork Nano and still use it as currency, and that's failed a few times. I mean, you know, there's been so many years of work behind building these communities and building kind of the team, or, you know, the ethos that we really live by, and that's not as replicable as people think it is.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I wasn't thinking of it necessarily as a you know, forking and creating my own currency, although maybe we could have that texture currency. I don't think it would. I don't think
use Nano.
I don't think we've got the community. I think we'll just push Nano instead. But but I think in terms of like actual applications that I might want to develop, you know, for example, there's an organization I'm working with at the moment where I could see an application for using that sort of technology for fast transactions that are secure and safe. But really, the sort of blockchain technology that's out there and available, perhaps, you know, I know Ethereum is probably the closest thing that has a sort of platform that you could use and, you know, apply internally. I was just curious as to how that would be potentially applied, because the thing you'd be looking for is something that is as fast as you're saying Nano is.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can always build a second layer on top of Nano. But on the protocol level, Nano has been, as I said, kind of designed to be a currency and a currency alone. We actually believe that there aren't that many utilities of cryptocurrencies outside of being a pure currency. I'm not the biggest supporter, I have to say, of smart contracts. I haven't seen them be proven to work. And then also, in my mind, smart contracts do not take in the incumbent human behavior of the world. So just say you've got art on the blockchain and you've got a piece of art and you're following its, you know, its ownership throughout, and just say it gets stolen and found again, goes to court and goes to a human judge, and they decide that actually the ownership lies with this person. Now you have a wrong immutable ledger then forevermore. And so I don't think that smart contracts and the ideology behind smart contracts has actually taken into account the human nature of how the world works currently. I think there's a future for them, but not as of yet.
That's a very good point, because obviously I think people have really jumped on the bandwagon of NFTs earlier this year.
Agreed, yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people thinking this is the new way that we deal with copyright. But you're very, very right. It's the it's the law. It's the things that get decided in the courts that dictate what actually happens. And I suppose, how do you fix the ledger? Because the judges don't know these things. I don't think.
Completely. I think NFTs are a beautiful example of the epitome of human nature. The act of wanting to own something, to say you own it but you don't physically have it, is something that I think is inherent within us as humans, wanting to say that we own something just for the sake of saying that we own it. That's my view on NFTs personally.
And there's some very crazy things up for sale, aren't there? We've seen tweets. Yeah. What else have we seen, Sam?
I mean,
websites.
Christie's have been doing a lot of NFT sales. I think they sold something for 60 million not too long ago, which is an eye-watering amount of money. So we'll see how far this goes, really. I hope it doesn't detract away from actually, the gig economy, artists, musicians being able to actually feel empowered and owning the sale of their own work online in a tokenized form.
I mean, I think there's definitely there's potential for like the music side of things. It would be nice if you were able to remove some of those bad contracts, I'd say, within the music world, so that the artists actually owned their own stuff.
Exactly, completely. And also, what we're some little side projects, and I'm going to say this out here in the hope that someone in our community jumps on this and takes it up. But we would love to create an Instagram Live filter, a skin, so that every time a musician does an Instagram Live, people can actually donate their Nano through a QR code, on a skin, so that people, can take 100% of their Nano as a donation, rather than having to divvy it up to whoever,
Digital busking. Busking, like a
exactly
virtual upside down hat.
Yeah, keep it digital.
Well, absolutely. That sounds fantastic. So, I mean, also, am I right in thinking, I'm going to check all my facts now because I got the transaction one wrong. 133 million nano.
Yes.
That's right. Cool. So how does that work then? How do you deal with having a fixed amount?
So the fixed amount is for deflationary purposes. So if you look at a country such as Argentina with a 50% inflation rate, every year, as a normal person, your bank account, whatever's in your bank account, is worth 50% less every year. That's just, it cannot work for a global currency in our view. So it had to be a fixed amount. Now, 133 million nano, that doesn't sound like a lot, but actually not what you're not seeing. It's 133 million times 10 to the 33. So there's 33 zeros on top of that 133 million. So that's why we are infinitely scalable. And, there are enough nano out there. When we feel that there has reached a critical mass of adoption, decimalization will be looked at with nano so that we make sure that, again, payment behaviors feels normal and you're not paying for a coffee with 0.0002 nano or, 33,000. It needs to feel like it's a normal currency and understood. So that's a little bit further in the future. But yes, there are 33 zeros that are hidden within that 133 million.
Interesting. And how's that going to, well, slightly aside from that, but how are you prepared for rumours of global crypto regulation?
We are, we're quite excited about it. In the sense that, so Nano is a non-security and we have main jurisdictions, we've got legal opinions stating that in various different jurisdictions, whether it's APAC, US or UK or German law covering EU, with regulation, I think there's a need to regulate this wild west of a space that there currently is. I do think there needs to be, instead of looking at actually the regulation, let's look at actually who are the regulators. Are they totally informed of the space? Are they making correct decisions based on evidence and true factual research, rather than what the media is spouting out or who has the most money to get in front of which lobbyist first? And that is currently the state of play. What we're trying to do is actually put ourselves forward and speak to regulators and go, there is a different way of doing this. There's a way that empowers people, yet is free, that is green, that is fast, and has everything that you are looking for when it comes to a global currency. So there's a time to work with regulators and make sure that we are creating a regulatory environment that actually increases and empowers innovation rather than stemming innovation, which I think most regulation is seen as to do. So I think it's up to us to try and change that environment moving forward when it comes to regulation of cryptocurrencies.
Do you think that's going to be an easy task, or
oh, goodness.
like how do you wedge into that?
Just with a lot of gumpture. So Colin and I actually invited us to a workshop with the FCA the other day on purpose, just so that we can start getting our foot in the door. We've got a lot of networks that we will have the opportunity to sit at roundtables with various people, and there's lots to come. But I think the lack of actual non-bias factual evidence on what the state of cryptocurrencies are and what the potential could be definitely needs a lot of work.
Well, I mean, they're very. I think it's probably a very different thing because of course I want to cover that you are the director, but you were previously the COO, right?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
And so you are now director not because you are less important. You are a director because you decided to, collectively, the two of you, to change your titles.
Yeah, we decided that Colin was CEO and I was COO. We weren't firstly kind of really fulfilling that delineation of title internally anyway, but actually it was a big step towards decentralization of what we deem Nano and the Nano network to be. And so we did rescind our titles about 3 weeks ago and decided that director was more akin to a foundational role, such as we have at Nano Foundation. I think I've been kicked by every mentor that I've ever had for doing such a thing, but actually it really speaks to the building blocks behind Nano and the direction that we're looking to bring Nano to, when Nano really is commercial grade. And that's really the time when we feel there is vulnerability is the wrong word, but there's no final huge, tweaks that we want to make to the code to make it more efficient. And we're looking at that kind of early next year. We will shut down the foundation because Nano must be a truly decentralized currency to be deemed a global currency. And we cannot, as Nano Foundation, put ourselves first before that. So we will offload and offshoot Nano as a full global currency of the world and shut down the foundation behind it. With any kind of ongoing maintenance, we're looking at the Linux, foundation model moving forward. And Colin and I will always be involved. And whatever we do, Nano will always be at the core of our heart. Wow. And so we'll continue working on that in our spare time.
So you've spun it up and let it go.
That's the eventual plan, yes.
Wow, okay. That threw me for 6, I think, that one, actually. I hadn't really expected that. Does that mean that you're essentially expecting to complete the roadmap then, or that it's then going into community-developed roadmap?
There's a limit to, we don't have that many changes to make, really, to really deem Nano as truly commercial and ready for the big bad world. We've got V23 coming up, and we're hoping to have that kind of completed. We all know how software works, so I'm not going to give any dates, but in the very, very near
future. You'll be ready when it's ready.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the reason why I asked you originally about the question about the director is that there's a couple of branches off this, right? So the fact that you started this company together and you've created this foundation, and now you're going into meetings that are talking about global crypto regulation. That's quite a departure in terms of where it starts to where it is now. Like, how do you actually? That's a very different. It's a very different thing. It's a very different job. Like, how comfortable are you shifting from that, let's create this thing, to actually now we're going to be a player on the global stage trying to regulate crypto?
I personally love it. I've always had, and I'm sure we'll go into this in a second, but I've always had a very interesting, I think, career pathway. But with Nano, it's so clear. It's so easy to feel passionate about it that, all the hard work and the challenges seem to, do pay off. We all have our bad days and our good days, but, I've been at Nano for 3.5 years now. And I was COO for 2 of those, 2.5. And so it's a crazy world and it's a challenge, but I think, Colin and I are definitely ready for that. And having kind of seen how the space has evolved and matured over the last couple of years, we really feel that actually we have something to share and to help the space kind of moving forward when it comes to speaking to the right people. I think our ethos in trying to keep, in trying to really do what we said we'd do, which is help those in need, create financial global inclusion for all, is something that, if you're open to continuously learning, which we are, we're also very open to be told that we could do better or we're doing something wrong. How can we improve? And we're trying and getting more communicative around kind of that kind of side and going, look, let's do this together. We are not here for our own personal gain. And that has really helped us. Also, Colin and I, we're best friends, and having, that unbreakable trust and unbreakable bond in doing this mad thing together. We often have to pinch ourselves to remind ourselves actually how global and how big this is. We can sit in a little bubble every now and again and think that we have a normal life, and it certainly is not.
And so you are also a director, as you mentioned, in Appia. So that's one of these complementary businesses.
Yeah, it started a couple of years ago, actually. We got very tired with the infrastructure around cryptocurrencies, not really catching up on the efficiency and the fee side compared to what we were trying to create with Nano. And so, we've got a feeless network with Nano, but then if a service on either end has a 7-hour delay, no one gets to feel that benefit. Or if you've got a feeless, network, then you've got fees whacked on each end as well. And so we decided to actually jump ahead and try and create our own. And that's where Appia was born. I think we should have put our time and money into cloning ourselves, because we have not been able to really dedicate as much time to Appia as we'd like. We're really looking forward to expanding Appia further and later on this year. But the real beauty of what we've created actually are hardware modules. So it's a hardware module which is a couple of inches by a couple of inches that fits into any automated payment machine. And so it displays a QR code. Appia is crypto agnostic. We will actually be moving that purely to Nano. We don't see a need for it to be agnostic anymore. And so with a new payment protocol, you actually have a merchant and customer certification process of that transaction, which needs to really happen in the crypto world. You've got huge long addresses, you don't know who you're paying, and to have that validation within the transaction, we felt was very important. But these modules, they have connectivity like there's no other. So they've got Wi-Fi connectivity up to 4G and then down to 2G fallback. So the purpose of these is they work in the Sahara Desert, they work underground, they work anywhere you need them to work. And will retail for around 50 to 70 euros, where our nearest competitor is at least $370+. Now that's not accessible for people to feel empowered as a merchant, if you have a market stall or wherever, to be able to accept crypto and move out of a cash society. And so that's really what we're trying to do with Appia. But really, I think the really exciting thing that gets me is these modules, they fit into vending machines, toll machines, arcade points, but electric car charging points too, which obviously is a huge new technology and infrastructure that has a huge backing behind it and an absolute necessity within the world currently. And so what I'd love to do and see are these modules being used within electric car charging points so that people can have their green and eco-friendly car pay with their green and eco-friendly Nano using the Appia module to do such a thing. So that's the dream there.
Wow. And so that's... again, something entirely different. You then moved into hardware development. That must
we
be...
have. We have. It's again been very interesting. It's been a huge challenge in actually the manufacturing side, and we have working prototypes right now. We haven't moved into the full-blown manufacturing side just due to funding, due to cost, and the fact that it's not our expertise. And so we're trying and looking to find more people to help us on the journey of Appia. But obviously Nano comes first.
So as you're going to have a platform, Appia, well, not necessarily a platform, but a hardware platform called Appia, that's reliant on Nano, once you've shut the foundation... what are the risks of the fact that you've shut the foundation and then your new business is reliant on the old one?
Well, it's not. The currency is a decentralized currency in itself. So there's no reliance on the Nano Foundation for that. It's just reliance on the currency working, and the currency works.
But do you foresee any risks in the shutting down of the foundation? I mean, I think it's a beautiful idea to be able to shut the foundation down. I mean, realistically, that is the mission of every charity. You know, we close our charities' doors because actually the job is done. And I'm not sure if there are any charities that have ever done that.
No, and maybe we'll be the first, but we're looking at a lot of changes. That is obviously our end goal, is to shut the foundation when Nano is at commercial grade. And once we've seen that it truly can be a global currency, there is no real need to have a foundation behind it. It has to be decentralized to be truly global. And what we see as what will secure the network are companies that also want to partake and use Nano will have a representative node. And therefore will all help support and secure the network as Nano's commercial side grows as well.
Okay, well, I mean, let's go back a bit, right? How did you get to this position? Because you went to the same university as me. You went to the University of Liverpool.
Yeah.
I think you started the year I left. But however, I was vice president of the Guild of Students. And so I know that you set up a Scrabble society, and that does ring a bell. So I'm not sure if we've actually met before.
We may have done. It's been an incredible journey, and I definitely have one of the more unnatural and uncouth, I think, pathways to become a director of such a foundation. I studied evolutionary anthropology at university, and from there I actually went to go and work in Madagascar for a while, working with lemurs and mapping biodiversity of lemurs out in the South Littoral forests out there.
Lemurs are cool.
Oh, they're so cool. But then, unfortunately, Rio Tinto came in and demolished all the forests that we were working in. So that's all gone in Madagascar. The joys of all of that. And then from there, I was lucky enough to actually to travel. I've always been an artist as a hobby of mine, and I'm a stippler artist, the tiny little dots that make up a bigger picture.
I love those. I've no idea how you even. I mean, I like a bit of art, to do a bit of art myself, but I have no idea how you even start on that.
I have no idea how I started. I have to be honest with you. I sat down one day and it happened, and it felt very natural. I can kind of squint my eyes and see in tones, and then I just dot through that, which is all very peculiar. But I was lucky enough to travel for a fair bit after university, and I was a cowgirl in the outback for around 6 weeks. So I've run various different things, and then came back and got a job in advertising. And my clients were Greenpeace, were BBC iPlayer, Virgin Trains, and I was doing, I was an account manager for all of them. And one of my clients was Cancer Research, and they would email me and go, "We want to make a GIF for our socials. Can you cost it up?" And I'd cost it up, and it would be something like $3,000. And I was the worst employee, because I would email my other half at Cancer Research and go, "Just go on this link and you can do it for free. I'm not charging Cancer Research to do this. You can do it yourselves, and I'll show you how." And I left 2 years the day of the advertising job, and was lucky enough to have all the support that I could to be able to do that. The reason why I did was someone came into our advertising agency. He was a big hedge fund owner, and said, "I want, an advert made like the MoneyGram one that you guys have done for somewhere else." And my agency said no, and I went, "Oh, can I take that on myself? I'm brand new. I'm probably, the lowest that there can be in this job." And they went, "Yeah, I don't really care. You can do that if you want." So I wrote this whole paper for them, being like, "Right, you need a whole visual rebranding. You can do this and do that." And the owner of the hedge fund actually said, "Great, fly down to Monaco. Here's your plane ticket, and you can present this to the board tomorrow." And I did. He then sent me down at lunch and said, "What do you really want to be?" And I said, "I'd love to be an artist. That's really my passion. I want to be an artist." And so he was like, "Right, if you quit at this point, I will give you X amount for your first picture," which I did, and he did. With my career, this is what I kind of try to say to so many other women and young people in this space, is that, to have, and exactly what I said earlier, to have that stamina and to have that grit and that inner want of a challenge, can get you anywhere that you want to be and to get to. There's no restrictions other than yourself in trying to go after what you want for yourself or for, your wider career. And you don't have to be. I've always been an inner nerd. I've always loved technology, but I'm not a coder. And I will hold my hands up and say that I wish I was, I really do, but I'm not. And what I bring as a director alongside Colin is, how can a technology company, or as we are trying to create a global currency, how can we do so without taking in the so many other facets that make up that technology, whether it's payment behaviors, the anthropological side of cultures, and payments are so different all around the world. If we just had, coders creating these currencies and these new technologies and innovation, we wouldn't be looking at the usability so much, or how that could affect culture and change. So I think, there always needs to be a balance within organizations, and that's what we've tried to create at Nano Foundation.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, because you're also a judge in Rising Women in Crypto.
I am indeed. I was last year, yes.
And so, how did that come about? And what's that? Well, tell us a bit more about that. What is that actually doing to try and is its intention to get more women into technology, into crypto?
It's about shining a light on women in the tech space. I think, there's so many voices that just are not heard. For instance, when some of the vernacular that I'm trying to change is the difference between hard and soft skills. I don't really believe that there is a delineation there. You can't teach people how to be natural around other people. That isn't a soft skill in my book. How can advertising or marketing or operations be a soft skill compared to what others deem hard? In the crypto space, we always get celebrated as developer team, a dev team. Less than half our team are developers. And, they don't, there's no visibility to everyone that creates their environment to allow developers to do their best work and to create that final product. With the Women in Crypto Rising list, the Rising Power list, that was the inaugural year. It's a campaign by Wirex, and I was very kindly asked to be a judge. We are very close with Wirex as partners, and I know the team very well. We've been working together for a while now, and I'm quite vocal in the space around women and the need for a safe environment for women online, and the abuse that is swept under the carpet far too often. With this, they're going to do a second year. They are yet to fully announce the campaign, but last year was wonderful, where it was all about recognizing the achievements of women and shining a light on those that might not be as visible as, the CEOs or whoever in a company who are so often celebrated. So it's really about that.
And so, are there any sort of general standard paths that people are following to get into, particularly from women? Are you seeing a difference between women and men in terms of the paths that they follow to get into technology?
Well, I mean, we have put out so many job listings, and this is kind of the best way to describe it. And I think we have received one CV from a female developer in 3.5 years.
Wow.
That says it all, really. I think this all comes back and stems from education and from school, to make sure that women and girls understand that there are viable careers within technology and within the science and STEM industries, that you aren't going to feel like, the one that stands out. I think we've all been to a lecture or a class where you're the only person, whether it's down to gender or whether it's down to this, you feel that you stick out, and therefore potentially don't feel as comfortable, or it's such a novelty. And how wonderful that you are there in the beautiful condescending manner that so many people use. I think it all definitely comes down to schooling, and I'm really excited to see a remarkable change. Even in the 3.5 years that I've been at Nano, I'm seeing a lot more visible female faces around, and actually our team is nearly 50-50, which is so exciting. But there's a long way to go. I still get called a whore constantly on LinkedIn, for instance.
Really?
And a student had the gall to do that on a post of mine. So I tagged his university and went, I'm sure they're incredibly proud that you have written this on LinkedIn, this professional network that your career will be based upon. But it all comes down to the insecurities of people online, the lack of accountability, the anonymous, the anonymous side of the internet mixed with finance. and therefore but also the lack of education around trading, financial security, and all of that mixed in with a lot of insecurity of people and how we treat each other online is, it's baffling. I mean, I've had my face deep faked onto porn and sent to various people. I've had doctored images sent on, I've got an auction on 4chan of who gets to rape me first. And that's been online for 3.5 years. I have petitioned to take it down by Google, but I have no right over that. Yet they have a right over my image and I don't. So there's a lot to be done when it comes to, again, the regulation of the internet. I believe in free speech, of course, but where is the line of harassment and where is the line of abuse? And where's the line of internet accountability when people create these things?
That's incredible. I have no idea how you managed to. You have to deal with so much with having something like that out there on the internet.
Yep, and all we're trying to do is change the world for better.
Yes, well, absolutely. I mean, that's been exactly the topic of conversation today, hasn't it?
But can you imagine, when I go and give talks to young girls at schools and they go, what's it like? Am I meant to be honest and open about my experience without sweeping under the carpet? Yes. But it's all down to all of us. It's down to men, women, and everyone to change this environment and stop pretending it doesn't happen, because it happens every day. And my job now moving forward is making sure that no other women feel and have to deal with what I've dealt with in this space.
How much do you think is general misogyny versus tech-specific misogyny?
It's a toughie. I think it's so intertwined. I think a lot of people like to just join in and they don't understand the gravity of actually what they're saying. A lot of these people who are writing these things have daughters, have wives, and that's a separate life to them. They've compartmentalized this abuse because it's not abuse, because we're not real people. And I've now started making a fuss because otherwise there will be no change. I've seen women have to go through similar things of what I have, and that really was my turning point of going, enough's enough. Let's talk about it. Let's be honest about the horrendous things that are being said or being created online. And it's all under the guise of a joke. And therefore, that is then the gaslighting side of making a fuss about it, because then I get told I'm playing the victim. I'm not. What I'm doing is I'm showing that people are abusive. It's a very different thing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's the. I suppose that's the same sort of sentiment that you've seen within Hollywood and everything that was around, specifically the Harvey Weinstein thing of like it was just accepted that was a thing that happened, and to ignore it, and it'll never change if you don't speak up against it.
Exactly.
But it requires such thick skin that I think as a white middle class male, I just don't really have enough of an appreciation for, because it must be so hard. I mean, I think we've all dealt with our own mental health battles, but I think it's I can't imagine what it would be like to be in that position of trying to do something for the better of society in the form of Nano, and then to have that stuff happen to you. I wasn't aware of any of that. It's astonishing. No,
I mean, for years I kept getting hounded by people going, what the fuck do you do for Nano? Sorry, I probably can't say that on a podcast.
That might be the first swear that we've had, but it's okay. I think it's appropriate.
Thank you. What do you do for Nano and all that kind of stuff? And to have to keep fighting for validation externally, while continuously challenging yourself with possibly one of the hardest challenges that there are, which is making a global currency, is exhausting. It's definitely been a challenge, and it's definitely pushed me to my maximum. But I couldn't have actually done this or survived this if I didn't have the best support network that I have. I've got Colin as my business partner and best friend, and he has been a huge support behind all of this. But the learnings, the team, the community, and my normal network, people still don't understand, I think, the gravity of how some things can stay with someone. But again, my journey has happened. I am going to do my best to make sure that no one else has to go through this.
And so that decision that you have between being blatantly honest with young girls who might be interested in a career in tech, or trying to explain it, how do you toe that line at the moment?
I'm asking for help on that, actually. I have started to have conversations this week with various other women who do such talks and head up such organizations, and trying to get girls into tech or fight kind of the abusive side of the internet. And I'm asking how to make sure that I'm using the right language and using the right tone while getting across the severity of the situation, but also not putting people off at the same time. So I've gone and asked for help, and I'm looking forward to hopefully getting better at towing that line and finding the right way to get across that this is such an exciting new world, and please be a part of it. Just have your eyes open, and we're all in this together, really, men and women.
Yeah, well, I think it's certainly something that we've tried to cover on this show as well, and we would like to do more of in the future as well, because I think it's so important that you have a balance, as you've rightly pointed out. Some of the best engineers, developers, other roles as well, I guess, of within tech of the women have played a pivotal part in that. In fact, actually, one of my first job in London was working for my second job in London actually was working for a consultancy that was all female project management consultancy. I was the first man hired. So that was an experience, really. And I think, from coming from a world where I wanted to be in project management at the time, and it was very male dominated. My dad was a project manager. Bang your fist on the table and say it must be done now. Very different in a way to the agile way that I was brought into there. And that was headed up by a particularly strong woman, I have to say. But with great soft skills. So to your point, how do those two things align, the soft versus hard skills? I think it's actually just being a nice person, probably.
It's caring, I think, actually.
Yes.
I know if I care about my team and I put their welfare first, I'm going to get the best work that I can from them because they're enjoying their work. I mean, I come from a long line of FX traders. My mum was a trader, my dad was a trader, and the whole of my family really are either doctors or FX traders. But I mean, look at the rise of Whitney Wolf Herd. And, CEO of Bumble, she is a great example here. And she's, a force of nature. Bumble was born out of a sexual harassment case from her own company.
Yeah, I only learned about that recently because we covered on the news show the IPO that they went through. Yep. But it was only after that I realised how it actually started.
Yeah, she was sexually harassed by by the rest of her team, the other founders, and thrown out of the company, having broken up with the initial founder, and then decided to put two fingers up and go and create Bumble, putting women first. And look who has succeeded, Bumble and not Tinder. So, by heralding women such as her and seeing that, the pathways, yes, that are, there is adversity behind the creation of Bumble, there's adversity in my journey that's not necessarily given. There are, hopefully by us kind of pushing through and plowing through with so many, formidable women before us, if we can help along that journey to make sure that no one else, goes through this in the future or in a lesser degree, or just change the conversation and narrative around these kinds of, situations, then surely that's for a better world.
Well, I think you talked before about, the school side of things and it changing in schools and having to start there. And it's probably not just in that area as well. I think it's probably media and things like that. If you go back to, there's a hell of a lot of movies in the 1980s that always pushed like the computer geek has been, glasses wearing, like my good self.
I'm a glasses wearer too, yes. Don't worry.
The glasses wearing male geeks in the corner, and again, the male thing I think is important there. Like, there's a whole load of stuff there, but how do we go about changing that? What is happening to change the narrative and to encourage women to get involved earlier?
I think it starts even earlier than that. I have to say, it's all down to look at the gender divide of, I've got two little nieces right now, and I want to buy consistently. They are into archaeology and dinosaurs and space, and I cannot find a t-shirt that's not in the boys section that has a rocket or a dinosaur on it. Boys have building blocks and girls have princesses and dollies, and that's how it starts. We are, from a tiny and early age, shown that that's the pinnacle of success, is to be a princess. And the pinnacle of success for a boy is to build and be an engineer or make rockets or be an astronaut. That's really where it starts. And let's change that narrative. And then let's see, what the difference of careers could come from that. I think also having to choose your career at 14 when you choose your GCSEs is terrifying, and that's also scary. I mean, I chose all sciences, and that's what I continued throughout my schooling. And I did 3 sciences at A-level and art, but that was unusual for me. That was unusual across my friends. They were all doing literature and all that kind of stuff because they didn't feel that they were strong enough in those sciences, whether that's down to the teaching or environments of the schools. But I really think it does come down to very early age learning and feeling like girls and boys are no different. I was lucky enough to go to an all boys school from 7 to 13, and I think that does change quite a lot of my understanding and development as who I am as a woman. I am incredibly forceful and kind of stand my ground because I've had to. It was an all boys boarding school, and I was the first girl, and I loved it.
How did you get into that?
It was our local school. My brother was actually in their final year, and they were turning to girls. I just happened to be the first one. But I mean, I was called George, and I can climb trees and build a tree house, and I can't paint my nails. But does that make me less of a woman? Does that make me a tomboy? So I think we need to start and change our narrative from a very early age.
How is that? Has that already started, or how do we start?
As someone that doesn't have kids, I have 2 little nieces. I've definitely seen a change, especially looking at how my brother has brought up his 2 little girls to loving dinosaurs and wanting to be astronauts. There's definitely been a remarkable change in that, but that's also down to conversations and I guess mothers and fathers, with very young children feeling like they can have those conversations nice and openly with their friends who are also in a similar position.
It does feel like a thing that's going to take a long time.
It is. So let's start and let's see how we go.
That sounds like a good plan. I mean, I was going to ask you as well, how does studying evolutionary anthropology, I didn't even say that right, how does studying evolutionary anthropology, how has the study of human behaviour helped with your career progression? But I think you may have answered that already.
Yeah, I'm glad you feel that way. I mean, in the most simple terms, I don't know how we can create a global currency without taking and considering the anthropological aspect behind the foundation of payment behaviors and culture. We at Nano try and put people first, and therefore that's all people. And so that's kind of what sets us apart. So let's look at people and making sure that Nano is useful for them, rather than pretending that you're fixing a real world problem that doesn't exist.
So are you still, as a company, still looking for your calling, as it were? You've got these core values that you have of trying to solve real problems, but does that mean, like you mentioned earlier about going to people and talking to them and finding out what their needs are, is that an active task that you're constantly doing? Like, when is it, where I guess my question is, like, when do you think is the, do you feel like you have a purpose and that Nano has its USP and that just involves constantly searching for different use cases, or are you still looking for the right use case?
Interesting question. We actually We are, as I said earlier, we take our time and make sure things are done properly. We've got 2 very large use cases that will be launched soon enough when they are ready, and they really are fixing a problem within businesses that they could not fix themselves, and only down to Nano can that be done. And we will release them when they are ready and bulletproof. With use cases, obviously anything that money touches, and Nano could touch and do better in our minds. Anyway, we have a lot of work to be done, but also what we're trying to do is empower the community to go and spread and grassroots and spread the word of Nano as well. With the kind of 2-3 big things under our belt, we've got no qualms about a steady nano volume and nano actually being used for a long period of time. How we get and cross that chasm to being a global currency for the everyday user, that is still a challenge that will continuously grow, and we will continuously learn along the way. But I think what's important is that we are continuously agile to continuously learning and not thinking that we have the answer, because I don't think anyone does.
And is that your personal kind of goal then? Is that where you would want to see it as being ubiquitous among everyone?
I would see that as we've been successful, then yes. But, you know, even when we see a Reddit post, for instance, someone in India in our community, they sadly lost a family member down to COVID at the beginning of the year. And then they decided to go out and hand out masks with Nano. And they gave out 5,000 masks in one day. Then the whole community donated to them, and they continued their work, and now giving out big parcels of rice and sustenance to their own community. Now, that is also a success for us and for Nano. It proves that we've actually made a remarkable change in someone's life, and what a most amazing feeling that is. So we'll continuously try and encourage and do that. But again, it's an ever-changing landscape that we're trying to navigate, and we absolutely do not have all the answers to it, but we're keen to keep learning.
Yeah, because like there must be so many untapped ways you can use Nano, right? And you're almost limited to your own kind of ideas, like, oh, we could use it here. Like, how do you go about finding those untapped resource or places, or, you know, are you inviting people to come forward with their ideas, like open competitions kind of thing?
It's definitely exhausting, that's for sure. But it's amazing the people that have come out of the woodwork, especially this year, who head up very, very large companies. And I've been watching you guys for years. And actually what I've seen you go through this year and overcome those challenges has made me actually finally want to reach out. And instead of going, we want Nano to be included in this, how can I help you get Nano to the state that you want to get Nano to then have it in that place? And that's what we're all about. Is Nano is so much more than a currency, and I hate this cliche term, but it really is a movement of community. And I think that's what we've been able to prove on a global scale with minimal resources, is that the passion behind changing the world and the passion and the drive behind altruism is far overlooked in commercial terms. And actually the power of altruism, the world is dying for and in need of a bit of love and a bit of sharing and a bit of humanity, and not looking for oneself consistently. And that really has what I think the Nano community has shown to a further afield. Whether it's, you know, someone in our community did a talk at Benin University in Nigeria a couple of weeks ago, and that was tweeted out, and the whole community jumped in, and through We Nano, which is one of the best apps ever. It's Pokemon Go, but with Nano. So remember, everyone running around with their phones, AR, Pokemon Go, you can actually run around with your phone through AR and pick up free Nano. And that's all being donated by other people within the community. And cool. So it's so cool. I 100% recommend downloading it.
They'll do that right after the show.
There'll be some spots dropped around. And if you zoom out on the map, you'll see the whole world is covered with people sharing Nano. And so when this person did this talk at Benin University, the community dropped spots everywhere. And that allowed all the students, as you know, who wanted to go and pick up their first bit of nano for free and partake in this empowerment that is nano.
Did you develop that app, or did
no, community based?
It's so good,
incredible. And then even better is We Nano Business. So if you're a small merchant, you can set up a spot, and people can pay you for your goods in We Nano Business at that spot, and then you can convert out to fiat if you want. Stay in nano. It's mind-blowingly cool. I 100% recommend downloading it.
And that person who did the talk, was that a talk about nano, or was it just,
Yeah, it was about cryptocurrency and then nano on top and how it's slightly different. That person is actually from Nigeria anyway, and all our community is organic. We've never paid for a social post. We've never paid for any true marketing. And all our communities are truly organic, which is just beautiful. I can't really describe it in any other way, really. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, and Reddit's kind of like the easiest representation of that, because Reddit is just such a, it's so community. Are there any other cryptocurrencies that are using Reddit as successful as you?
I don't know. I have to say, we are so razor focused with our goal. We're trying to remove ourselves actually from the cryptocurrency space. We don't really feel that we are a cryptocurrency. We are just digital money. Simple. Nothing more, nothing less. And we are obviously a non-ICO project. We don't really fit into, and we're not really a trading asset. That's not where we are putting nano. Obviously, it is traded. It is traded in the markets in that way. But that's really not what brings people to our subreddit. It's so much more. It's really about humanity and changing it, which is quite amazing.
Yeah. Can I ask you a personal question?
Yes, you can.
What did you want to be when you were in year 6?
Do you know what? I always wanted to be a vet. Always. I know, not as exciting as people think, but I always wanted to be a vet or an architect. When I was about 6 or 7, I used to wish that I was older and to be more of an adult. And once you get there, God, what I'd do to go back, I have to say. But I'm going to turn that around. What did you both want to be when you were younger?
You go for it, Chris.
I think I wanted to be a fireman.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. Either that or a train driver.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to be a racing driver.
Oh, yeah. So I still want to be a racing driver. Definitely.
Well, I was for a while.
I'm a huge F1 nerd, so
me too.
I love cars. Yeah,
me too. And I've recently got into watching. I bought a subscription so I can watch F1 through a VPN, and
I love it.
And now, because I have that subscription, I've been watching IndyCar, NASCAR, absolutely everything.
You've weakened the quality slightly in my books, I have to say.
I have got into the IndyCar a bit though. I do quite like it because there's a lot of overtaking. There's a lot of overtaking. It's quite good racing. Although I really do like the the innovation. I've always loved the technical innovation in Formula One. Yeah,
that's it. It's amazing. And actually the pit stops I just find are possibly the most efficiently organized. I find it.
Oh, the sub 2 second pit stops that Red Bull have been knocking out of the park. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
There's a really good example of one of my tech mentors has used this as an example in various talks before, where he talks about how pit stops were done in the 1950s versus how they're done now, and he plays the two videos. It's on YouTube. How the two
so going to go and look that up.
I'll send you a link. But it's basically a pit stop in the 1950s, and it takes them over a minute to change the tires. And then it goes, and now, and they're gone.
It's madness,
it's insane how it's changed, because it's just people in that respect. That's a purely people-focused thing.
Completely. And I think that the concept of how to make things more and more and more efficient, that is nano through and through. Yeah. I find it absolutely fascinating. Please do send me that.
I'll dig it out and I'll send it across.
I'll watch that.
Go on then, Sam. What did you want to be?
What did you want to be?
I wanted to be an actor, and then they told me forget about it.
Who told you to forget about it?
The person who did the sort of interview about what I want to do when I'm older.
No.
So yeah, so I didn't pursue that then.
But now
I still did drama, but
podcasting, it's not far off.
There's an entertainment aspect to it,
Exactly.
Especially when you get drunk and do the news show.
Yeah, this is like my 6th whiskey, so I'm good.
Oh dear.
I've been waiting for a time to put my glass up.
I know. I've been watching. I've wondered if you were drinking it or not.
I am. I just didn't want the glug to end up in the final recording, just like some of my notifications going off, which I'm so sorry that I didn't turn off before.
I actually haven't heard any notifications.
I haven't heard it. I heard Chris's clicky clacky keyboard.
I heard
That's what I heard.
Yeah, apologies for that. That's my new exciting thing that I've just bought. You can see it, but people at home can't see. It's very cool.
What? I've just bought the same because
Have you?
And very similar. I know the website you just bought that from.
Yes.
Because it's got the coolest variations of keyboard colours that there are. And we've made an indestructible, my brother did, nano node that, can withstand just an apocalypse, basically. And it's got a funky keyboard, same colour variations.
That's very cool. I mean, I think they're a great keyboard, actually. I've been really enjoying using it. Of
Very
course,
old school.
It is old school. Definitely not the best keyboard to host a podcast with, though.
I mean, we didn't notice the thing, I promise.
Well, we'll edit it out later because I can't type and talk at the same time, so I'm sure that'll be fine. I think we've missed out on something which we skimmed over. You said you were a cowgirl for a while. What was that about?
So when you live in Australia as a tourist, you have to do 3 months of some sort of farm work. Now, everyone likes to go and pick fruit and have a horrible time. I decided to do something that I would never be able to do again, which was a gillaroo. So I was on a horse herding cattle for around 4 or 5 months, and had a very, very mad, healthy time.
Did you have prior horse riding experience?
Yeah, I'm a country girl at heart, so I did grow up on horses. Never had them myself, but always was lucky enough to borrow others. But this was a different kind of style. This is 40,000 cattle charging at you, and you've got to corral them somehow. So it was definitely a crazy experience, and one that, when you look back on an experience, you definitely only remember the positives and not the negatives. It's definitely something like that, I think. But I've never been as fit then as then. Went on to run a rodeo after that for a little while as well. But that's not as animal kind of friendly as it should be. But yes, I ran a rodeo too. You ran a rodeo as well? Yeah.
Wow, so you can literally say, this is not my first rodeo.
Yes, I can. I can.
And have you?
I have, unfortunately.
The penny has just dropped for me. Cowgirl.
Yeah.
Like cowboy, cowgirl.
Yeah.
You wrangle cows. Like I didn't, never made that connection.
What did you think it was?
I just thought it was a name, like a name of someone who wore a hat and used to ride around on horses. I just thought it was just.
It is a job, That's where it comes from.
I mean,
if I had a penny, I'd drop it.
Our nearest town was 8 hours away from this ranch, and so we're in the absolute middle of nowhere. And I was the only worker there. It was either doing that or living with 2 elderly nudists who had a kangaroo sanctuary. Which I thought would be a lot of fun, but actually then I decided that I'd much rather not see, old naked men every single day.
That would be an experience, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That really would be an experience.
Went for the cowgirl instead, and actually I wouldn't change the world. It was such a learning experience of fitness and challenge.
Which part of Australia was this?
So in Queensland, up by Theodore, and then 8 hours inland from that. Yeah.
Yeah, things change a little bit when you get into Queensland, I noticed. It becomes very rural, very rural. Sugarcane everywhere, I noticed.
Yeah, Bundy rum, which I think gets rejected from the rum. It's made from sugarcane.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Oh,
I mean, having said that, I haven't had a drink in 18 months, but I think we went to the Bundaberg factory.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah, and sampled all of the rums. In fact, I think we've still got some... It was like caramel flavoured rum down. I think we might still have some of that downstairs.
I'll take it off your hands. That's fine.
Yeah,
Oh, I think.
so will I.
Well, I've given it up. The wife has not.
Drinking Bundy by herself, I think, is in the UK definitely a new thing for sure. But we at the radio, we had Bundy on tap mixed with Coke. So 250 cowboys in every morning from 9 a.m. They would ride a bull, and break their arm by midday, duct tape it up, and then ride another and continue drinking. I've never been more forceful. It was a great managerial lesson there.
Well, that'll teach you how to corral people, if anything, I guess.
It does indeed. It does. Thick skin.
Well, I have to say, this has been an experience, this talk.
There's been ups, there's been downs, there's been all around.
All around, yeah, exactly. Well,
thank you very much for coming on and talking to us. I thought it would be an interesting chat, and it certainly has been just that. So thank you very, very much for being on the show.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for having me.